This recording was made on my iPhone.
Good morning. How are you all today? Thanks for showing up. If you guys want to sit in the front seats, please do. Anyhow, I know, don't be shy. Anyhow, good morning. If you need me to use a microphone, please let me know. First of all, I want to thank you for showing up. And secondly, I want to thank our host, ECRM, for having this. So thank you for ECRM for putting this together. Today we're going to talk about the future of private brands at retail. And if you can read this, here's kind of the setup to what I'm talking about. I believe that private label is simply more than just a price-driven commodity, okay? So a little bit about me. I've been doing this almost all my life, about 25, 30 years. I carried a bag. I've worked as a grocery manager. I have trained category managers in retail, manufacturers across different channels, etc. Several years, I've worked for Kimberly-Clark, Unilever, and Spins. And several years ago, I decided to hang my own shingle, so to speak. And so I started writing articles, and my articles, about 160 of them, have been published by those organizations, Progressive Grocer, Natural Food Merchandiser, Supermarket News, etc., which led to several speaking opportunities, which led to opportunities for me to mentor, advise, and become an expert for Bill Bishop's Brick Meets Click, Circle Up, Next, FBU University, BevNet University, etc. And by the way, we'll have time for questions afterwards. Some key facts to be thinking about is that about one of every $5 is spent on store brands. That's significant. Store brands, though, only increased a moderate amount over the last several years. So retail sales are up about 2.3% in grocery, but 83% of that volume is by national brands. Now, in contrast, natural products grew 12% in 2012, and I don't have a more current number than that. The reason this is significant is because natural products are typically a lot more expensive. Point being that consumers are willing to pay a premium for products that meet their needs. This is a key theme throughout this entire presentation, so keep it in the back of your head. So the three questions I want to delve into, and those are, why do store brand promotional pricing strategies differ so greatly within a single retailer? Why don't retailers hold store brands at the same high standards as national brands? And then more importantly, in a challenging economy, why isn't store brand sales growth higher? So again, keep this in the back of your mind. This is what we're going to be discussing today. Well, the first answer is that consumers have a variety of choices to look at the digital space. So I see a lot of consumers migrating into that. You've got situations where I can sign up to get my coffee automatically sent to me every month. More importantly, there might be 12 retailers in my community, and I can go to any one of those retailers to buy what I need. Remember, the name of this game is to try to get the consumer to purchase everything from their shopping list in my store as a retailer. And if you can do that, that's how you win this game. Well, some interesting facts. First of all, shoppers like store brands, and as you can see by this chart, they think it's a good alternative. It usually has good value for the money. Quality is good as some of the name brand products, etc. These are key components that help drive sales of store brands. But this is what's really interesting to me. Shopper penetration. If you look at the boxes in white, that's 2012, versus the boxes in blue, that's 2014. You can see that the middle three, that the flavor, the brand choice, the ability to make products last longer, those have decreased over the last couple of years, the perceptions. This tells me or indicates to me that retailers aren't doing a good job at keeping pace with consumer needs and wants. Remember that comment about natural products? This is indicative of an opportunity, or points out an opportunity for retailers to do a much better job of aligning with the consumer and shopper needs. And of course, at the bottom, appeals to multiple people in the household. That's up. That's a good thing. So who's buying private label? No surprise here. Larger families at home, 35 to 54. What's interesting about this slide is look at all the areas that are flat. Definitely a lot of opportunity to grow in these segments. So again, as you're planning your private label strategy, and as we get more into this, the question and answer period, definitely want to cover this more in depth. Here's what's really exciting. Shoppers spend more, almost 3 times as much, your loyal shoppers versus your occasional shoppers. This, again, points out a tremendous opportunity for retailers to help develop that private label or that shopper brand, store brand, opportunity. And you can see where they spend more per occasion. Store brand growth by channel is the highest in supermarkets, but you can see where it's growing most in the dollar store, in drugstore, Consumers have been trained to look for the private label or the store brand next to the national brand. It's a key strategy, and it's one that works very, very well. I've seen a lot of retailers try to get away from that by putting their store brands in a unique or different or special place. I don't think that's a good strategy. The reason I put this slide in here is actually to point out that consumers are actually looking for those products on shelf. Remember, private label products or store brands it's typically a decision that's made at shelf. It's not something that someone typically puts on the shopping list. Remember the slides before. So let's talk about brand differentiation between the store brand and the natural brand. From my perception, and my belief is that retailers should encourage collaboration between national brands and store brands. But to do that, they first need to understand their different perspectives. Now remember, I've been on both sides of the fence, so these are some of the rumblings, if you will, that I've heard throughout my career. From the retailer perspective, high margins, low cost gives shopper a price alternative national brands, encourage national brands to be more price sensitive. That's a key component. Some retailers actually use their private label, their branded products, to drive people to their private label. There's one retailer, and I'm not going to mention any names, that has the highest prices in the market for their branded products, but when they discount them, they put them on sale, they're the lowest price in the market. But when they bring the consumer into the store, it's my belief that they're trying to encourage consumers to switch from the branded products to their private label products. Don't know how effective that is as far as they're concerned, but interesting strategy. Anyhow, it gives retailer greater control of the assortment of the category, allows retailers to compete with discount chains, extends the retailer's brand, provides a broad product offering for a diverse shopper base. This is key because private label or store brands allow you to cater to a variety of different groups. And as we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, I believe that there should be a 3-tier strategy. You should have a economy brand versus a super premium brand, and of course something in the middle. From the brand perspective, it's untouchable. This was something that I grew up with hearing all the time. Can't touch private label no matter what happens. That's frustrating from a brand perspective because sometimes you see opportunities and you want to point those out to the retailer. So when a brand fails to meet shopper needs, it's not discontinued the same way that it would be. When a brand fails to meet shoppers' needs, it's discontinued. When a private label or store brand item fails to meet consumers' needs, a lot of times it stays on the shelf and collects dust. Private label is a higher priority than brands. It has an unfair price advantage. It pulls dollars out of the category. I'm sure you've heard all these comments before. Store brands are competitive. They're so much better. I remember growing up in this industry when generic was the original private label. Who here remembers generics? A few of you. Some of you are too young, but that's okay. Anyhow, so generics, if you remember, those were the seconds from a main manufacturer, Del Monte, the things that they wouldn't put in their regular cans. Sometimes it was good. Sometimes it was so bad that I wouldn't feed it to my neighbor's dog. So quality is improved dramatically. And the point being here is that now store brands are every bit as good in some areas as the national brand. They compare favorably in national brands. They offer more choices at shelf. Again, more selection. But the cool thing is you get to put your retailer's brand on it. And I think there's an opportunity to do a much better job in that area. Encourage more shelf-based. We talked about that a minute ago, but the key point here is that if you leverage the strategy correctly, again, getting the consumer, the shopper, to buy more of your products, more of their shopping list while they're in your store, that's the way you win this game. That's how you remain competitive. That's how you stand out in the community. And then differentiates retailers from the competition, and more importantly, effective branding needs to be the focus of all store brands, messaging, promotion, and merchandising. And we'll get to that in a minute. Like I said, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers because this is the last slide. So recommendations. I believe that retailers should consolidate store brands at a single retailer and do a 3-tier strategy. Premium, super premium, and economy. A single brand strategy allows you to attract and build loyal shoppers using a single brand strategy for each tier. What I'm getting at is that those consumers are different within the different tiers. And if you can get someone to migrate, if you will, from an economy to a premium to a super premium, and again, there's an opportunity there to grow dollars in the category. A single brand strategy reduces consumer confusion. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to walk into a retailer and try to figure out what their strategy is for their private label. Remember, I do this for a living. I can usually, by the way, tell you that when I go into a retailer, I can tell you probably who did the schematic, what the merchandising strategy is, etc. And if I can't understand what the retailer is trying to do, imagine what the average consumer is trying to figure out in terms of as they look at that category. It reduces out of stocks, maximizes merchandising efficiency, promotional effectiveness, etc. And again, I want to talk about a lot of this, so hopefully you guys are going to be able to ask a lot of good questions. I believe that store brands need to be held to the same high standard as national brands. Again, it shouldn't be that untouchable thing that that we can't do anything with. I cannot tell you how many category reviews I've done for manufacturers and retailers across multiple channels where there's a private label item that is just collecting dust, that is doing horribly, but yet there's an item in the market that the retailer doesn't have on their shelf. I've recommended that item, but for whatever reason, a lot of the retailers say, no, we're going to stick with what we've got. So you've got something on the shelf that isn't effective, that's not, sales are horrible, and yet you're missing an opportunity in the store brand. I think that needs to be addressed. Here's a strategy to do that. Set realistic performance goals for store brands, different strategies for each tier. Again, I mentioned that. Include store brand manufacturers and category assessments, same as branded manufacturers. If we were to hold the retailer store brands to the same level that we hold a national brand, a P&G, a Unilever, etc., competition is just going to get better. It's just going to raise the bar, and you're going to get a better assortment. Assortment again that once again meets the needs of the consumer. I believe that we should leverage manufacturer partners to evaluate store brands and their store brand performance. This is key. You leverage leverage the brands to do category reviews where they're telling you how to grow their category with their brands, with the competition, etc. But a lot of times, again, it's as though private label doesn't exist within those reviews. Allow it to hold the same weight as any other brand within the category. By doing that, you're going to weed out the things that don't make sense to have in your shelf, and you're going to identify the opportunities that your competitor down the street has, and hopefully be able to get that into your set. Task manufacturers to review store brand performance and category reviews, so that encourage manufacturers to make recommendations. Again, this is key to the survival or the success of store brands. Remember, store brand growth is not that great over the last several years. It's not even keeping pace with grocery growth, and it's at a fraction of the pace, if you will, as natural products. Anyhow, I also believe that you should develop strong store brand loyalty programs to attract new shoppers. The reason this is key, again, trying to get consumers to put more of the store branded products in each shopping basket. Try to build that network, if you will. Try to build that value proposition. This is all I have for you. Like I said, I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions and answers. So any questions? Yes, sir.
Right away. You talked about the very first thing up there about single brand strategy. You talked about private brand being up 1%, natural 12%, but now on natural. I'm assuming you mean organics with that?
Natural organic. That was a good question. Natural organic. My focus is primarily the natural organic channel. And so, yes, when I'm talking about natural, I'm talking about Whole Foods, Sprouts, natural grocers, etc.
Okay, but my question now is going to be, with both the single brand strategy within a store, a lot of retailers have a specific brand for the natural organic segment.
Right.
I'm a Super Value at Wild Harvest. You go to Kroger, they have a name, Target has a name, Safeway Albertsons has a name. Is that confusing in the tiers? Because again, unless I'm confused with what you're saying here, a single brand strategy, usually you have a main brand in your store as a private brand. Your natural organic becomes a different brand. Are you saying they should be the same?
No. I think that they should be different brands, okay, but they should have a unified strategy.
Okay.
I live in Denver, Colorado. I think that Simple Truth does a phenomenal job in terms of branding their product. I think that 365 does a lousy job of communicating the value and proposition across the different categories, etc. I can't figure out exactly what Safeway is doing. Again, I'm not trying to pick on anyone. Wild Oats, which is a quasi-private label for Walmart, again, there's an opportunity for them to unify that brand strategy and help it better relate to the consumer. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, and then one more question follow up on that. Then.
Sure.
Integrate that product within the set within all products across line, segment it, like
Very good
the
question.
industry has in the past. And then also, one more thing out of that, when you answer that, what do you do in the frozen world?
Very good question. Actually, and that's kind of interesting. I've written 4 or 5 articles have been published internationally about this exact topic. So obviously it's getting a lot of traction. Integrated versus segregated. Let me explain. Integrated is where you put the natural products in with the conventional or mainstream products. Segregated is the store within a store concept. To my perception, that's a really, really bad idea. And actually, some retailers have actually gotten away from that. Here's why. If I'm a consumer and I'm coming into your store and I want to buy natural products, well, do you want me to have to shop in one store, quote unquote, before I go to the main store? What if I don't find all my needs? If I don't want to be bothered with that, because I'm pretty time-starved as your typical consumer, so I go to the mainstream set, but I'm looking for a healthier alternative, you know what I mean? Don't be offended. But you know what I mean? So anyhow, into the mainstream set, and all of a sudden I'm looking for something else, some different variety, something that's maybe gluten-free or whatever. I may not take the time to go to that other store to look for that. So that's why it's a really bad idea. Remember, it's all about consumer perception, right? So if I walk into a store, and I don't mean to pick on any brands, I think Oral Wheat's a very good product, bought it for years. But if I've got Dave's Killer Bread or Rudy's or one of those natural organic brands next to Dave's Killer Bread, $4.32 for a bag of Oral Wheat versus $4.60 or something like that for a bag of Dave's Killer Bread, that's pretty easy. 50 cents more, 20 cents, whatever it is, to make that switch into a natural organic product. That's going to drive category growth. It's going to give me more choices at the shelf. It's going to give you an opportunity to develop a more loyal shopper. Because remember, as a consumer, when I walk into your store, if you don't have the selection that I think you need to have, in my perception, you're doing a lousy job. So if you have those natural organic products and you put them next to the conventional or mainstream products, you give me an opportunity to trade up. Now, store brands, what's cool about that is that if I can't afford that super high premium natural organic product, well, I might find an alternative to that is a private label, store branded product. It's going to be in the same section. So to answer your question, great question, I believe that you should have an integrated, segregated set, meaning that all of the conventional products are together with the natural products right next to it, preferably in a block, so that you don't have Kraft macaroni and cheese and Annie's right next to each other necessarily. I mean, you want them right next to each other, but I wouldn't try to break it up with integrate the Annie's and the different brands, the Pacific Foods, etc. Within that set, I try to put the natural organic products right next to them. Does that help?
Yeah, we've done it integrated, but we've run into a lot of problems. We run into problems with the branded folks when we get into the freezer section. So Amy's doesn't want to lose all their brand recognition by being opening this door and that door and the door over here. They want to be brand locked and get some frozen. Frozen has been the challenge for our company. That's what I'm getting.
And that's exactly, and that is a challenge. Because from the perspective of the manufacturer, you know what? I like where I'm at. Okay, and this isn't all an education thing. If Amy's were to understand what we're talking about today, they would understand that if you're positioned next to some of the conventional, the Kellogg's, all those other different brands that are out there, then the consumer can trade up. So instead of saying, look, we're a brand and we stand on our own. Remember the old P&G, Tide wants the entire shelf or whatever? Okay? Instead of just saying, look, we're a brand, we want our shelf space, etc. Now the retailer is saying, here, we're going to give consumers an opportunity to try you, to sample you, an opportunity to give you an opportunity, if you will, to allow consumers to try something different. And so from a win-win point of view, they're making, in my perspective, a big mistake. And the category reviews that I've done in all the different categories spell that out. So again, it's a huge mistake to have a segregated section, because unless that brand is strong enough to stand on its own merits, then it'll eventually fail.
And I use your name on my current category review that says you said we should integrate.
I think it's a mistake. I think it's a huge mistake.
I
agree. I think it's a huge mistake.
I agree.
In fact, I can, if you got time, I can point out specifics. But no, I've worked with a lot of different brands. I've actually trained, and by the way, category management, when I talk about category management, I'm talking about from more from the manufacturer perspective. I call it true category management in my articles. Meaning I'm not the retail buyer, I'm not the guy that keeps the shelf pretty, I'm not the guy that does the schematics, etc. I can do that, but I'm the guy that develops the strategy that helps you put your products in the hands of the end consumer. And so with that said, I've trained retailers and manufacturers, etc. on these exact principles. And those that get it are growing sales sustainably, and more importantly, they're growing sales in the category. Another question? Don't be shy. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I love pharmacother. I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm Catherine.
I know you. We've talked. I thought you looked familiar. Yeah, I've actually been up to your office several times.
How do you recommend, I think you suggested trying to partner with the national brands in advertising.
Yes.
And, you know, if I do like a Giovanni shampoo and get a pharmacother conditioner for $2 off or something like that, then I step on Giovanni's conditioner. How do you recommend you partner in your ads and advertising to try to bring them in the door with the national brand and then get them to your best?
Interesting question. Boy, that is a tough one. And the reason that's a tough one is because some retailers do it so differently. For example, there's one retailer, not to mention any names, but they'll put the branded product out and then they'll put the private label next to it and discount it the heck out of it. And it's really, really sad because the branded product pays for the shelves, pays for the ad space, pays for the end cap, etc. And then undercut them so dramatically. It's clearly an attempt to drive consumers to the private label. In my mind, and from my estimation, that's not cool. That's not a good idea because you don't want to alienate your branded partners. You want them to participate and contribute. My recommendation is, yeah, you want to be able to do that, but you might do couponing on shelf or somehow use it. You want to draw the whole idea. Remember the merchandising, the two different brands together. It's saying that this national brand is similar to this store brand, and that's the inference that consumers make. So that's a very good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. So by doing that, you're helping the consumer say that, aha, this is like my favorite national brand. So first of all, when you promote, you want to try to really support that, really build that up. Secondly, in terms of the pricing strategy, I wouldn't undercut them to the point where they can't sell, if that makes sense. I mean, literally, there's a retailer out there that their private label will be a third or half of what the branded product is. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. I try to set like close to 10% under, and I wrote consciously.
I think that's smart.
An ad next to the branded ad.
I think that's really smart. And again, because remember, building consumer base, encouraging loyalty to your brand, etc. You're giving the consumer an opportunity to say, aha, these are similar. I can save a little bit of money, but yet in terms of quality and meeting my needs, yes. So, does that help? Okay, another question? Want to make something up? Well, actually, we're 26 minutes after, so the session ends in 4 minutes. Unless anyone's got any other questions, we're finished. Thank you again for coming. I appreciate it. And I'll make this deck available to ECRM.